Parks Department and the Conservancy and the TERS and whoever is involved. But they're going to have a meeting once a year that's posted, that's open to the public, and that will be available for information on what has gone on and what is going to go on in the year before and the year coming. I am incredibly grateful for that. I think it was an important piece that we needed to add in. The TERS is an excellent choice for this. I just think this is a terrific opportunity for the park. But this one piece needed to be involved, and I just want to thank John Breeding and TERS 16 for their willingness to work with us on this. Thank you so much. Councilmember Pennington.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to note for the record, as has been stated several times in public session, that all the meetings of the TERS are open.
Yes, they are.
So, you know, if you want to have another meeting, that's fine, but I think it's irrelevant because every meeting is open. And in addition to that, of course, you know, Mr. Turner and the City Council, of course, will consider these matters in public session before anything is constructed. So, I'm all for public input. I know that the master plan will be developed only after substantial public hearings and meetings and probably a number of changes. So, and I think there's never too much public input when we're talking about a large public park like this, and I do believe the procedures are in place to provide for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Noriega. I just want to perhaps clarify my point. My concern was not about the TERS meetings. They are public, and they do an excellent job of that. All TERSs are available, and lots of our TERS groups work with parks. This is not any different than any other TERS. What they agreed to in a discussion that I was part of was to be sure and have one meeting a year that specifically addresses Memorial Park. There are a number of safeguards built into the system that allow City Council and the Parks Department to backstop this. But this just ensures that this topic is addressed once a year, no matter what. So it isn't a question of whether the TERS meetings are open, they're all open. It's a question of that this will be on the agenda at least once a year. And this is an agreement. This isn't some heavy-duty thing. I just appreciate their willingness to make sure that the public is assured that this is absolutely available information. Thank you. Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to encourage my colleagues around the table to vote for this. I feel strongly that I really feel strongly it's a win-win. I think it's great for the TERS. I think that whether you want to refer to it as the front door or the back door of the TERS, Memorial Park is a gem. It needs an infusion of cash. This is something that is not taking away from our general fund. It is something that is going to ensure that in the future, those saplings, while we may not be here to see them grow, or I may not be here to see them grow, fair enough, that years to come, those trees will be there. There'll be a watering system in place. I suspect that'll be one of the things that'll be put in. There'll be infrastructure. It'll remain beautiful. There'll be opportunities to bike and to hike and to enjoy the natural beauty that the city has to offer. And I think the concern that some of my colleagues have had about the openness of the process is going to be there. We're going to insist that be input from the users as to how the master plan will be devised. And I'm just terribly comfortable, and I think we're going to be looking at something that's going to benefit the TERS and benefit the park as well. So, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I want to thank you and Councilmember Pennington for working to extend the additional 2 weeks. I think it was helpful to allow for more public discussion. I think many of the items on the table have been fully vetted. And I agree with Councilmember Cohen that this is a win-win. I think that some much needed mobility improvements will be done in the uptown park area, the Galleria area, to really assist employees and residents living in, and they need to get in and out of the area. And so we can continue to make that a major activity and workplace center that it is, a hub of activity. And on the Memorial Park side, just to make sure that we continue to protect the park, the much needed improvements, perhaps for irrigation and other things that are needed to protect the tree canopy from other potential droughts in future years. And there will be a very transparent process, a very robust planning process, master plan process that will take place with numerous stakeholders. Public meetings will be a part of that. Other layers of oversight will include it having to come before committee and then ultimately before council, and obviously with the Parks Department and Director Turner ultimately having oversight and direct control over the park. So there's many ways that we'll be keeping an eye on this. In addition, we daily or routinely work with parks and churches in almost every council district to my knowledge. Some of the examples that were laid out including Emancipation Park, Baldwin Park, and others. So this is just another park. We know the importance of Memorial Park, and definitely nobody wants to do anything to hurt Memorial Park in any kind of way in terms of the beauty that already exists. So I think too that this is a win-win, and I appreciate the added transparency. We'll all be keeping an eye on this because we want to make sure it's truly successful. Thank you.
Councilmember Christie.
Mr. Owen, I just want to let you know the tree that we planted is tall and stellar. You'll be able to have picnics with your grandchildren underneath that.
Thank you.
Because of you, it leans a little bit to the left, but that's okay. I'm excited about this park. If you've been there, and I've jogged Memorial Park for 35 years, and the Parks Department and the contracts that the city let out, the park is really looking good. They're cleaning the dead wood out, and it's looking beautiful. But can you imagine what tremendous new fun infusion will look like? And I still predict that that when finished, Memorial Park will make Central Park look like some kind of kiddie park. So let's vote for this.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is a great opportunity to do a regeneration in Memorial Park, and the only way you can get it done is to go through the TERS. But I would like to make a statement to the fact that TERS does erode the money coming into the general fund. It absolutely has an impact to the general fund. Maybe what I'd like to see is, through budget and finance, is what is the impact over the last 5 to 10 years of TERS on the general fund, and what is a long-term projection of the impact? As we look at TERS, they're generally 20, 30 years. And that is money taken away from general fund going into fee to TERS. And in many cases, the legal fees are quite enormous. So my point is running it through budget and finance and making sure that we have a historical perspective of what the impact of TERS has done to the general fund, and maybe looking at the next 5, 10, 15 years of the economic impact down the road. So thank you. And correct me if I'm wrong on the TERS to general, because I think it is definitely an impact.
The citizens can do it on their own, go to the city's website, look at each of their annual budgets and add them up. And that would come directly to the general fund. I don't have a big appetite for TERSs anymore, because they do pull money out of the general fund, but there are, I know that there are some pending requests in the pipeline for more TERSs. Councilmember Costello.
Thank you, Mayor. Colleagues, I've avoided weighing in on this particular subject only because of the fact that I know all the facts. And a lot of the rhetoric that has gone on relative to public comments about the lack of transparency, the issues relative to the conservancy, the issues relative to the TERS. So I'm just going to state some facts. Being an advisory board member and being prior chairman of this organization and a board member since 1996, I know how the process works. And here's how the process works. Prior to 2004, the Conservancy raised $500,000 of private dollars to do a master plan. They had a number of public meetings with the user groups and communities around the park to develop a master plan that was presented to City Council in 2004. The master plan was partially approved. Projects have been built in the park with both public and private dollars. in accordance with the accepted master plan, which included a bridge, 1.5 miles of trails, and currently a $2 million running center that will be breaking ground shortly, all according to a previously adopted plan. All those projects have been coordinated directly with Parks and Rec from the start of the conception of the project through design, through construction. They will continue to do that in this particular phase. Same process. We're going to redo the master plan. We're raising private and public dollars for a new master plan. We'll do the same process, going through public hearings. We'll develop a master plan. We'll present it to City Council. City Council will approve it. And as projects are being developed by either the TERS or the Conservancy, Public Works will be involved in that, as well as GSD, as well as Parks and Rec. So the issue of lack of transparency is very shallow. It's not true. It's been transparent since day one. And really, if you think about it, this is a great opportunity for us to get money into a park that has been neglected for many, many years. And you can't fault anybody because of the portfolio that Parks and Rec has, over 350 parks throughout the entire city. And they have very limited funds to do work in these parks. So this is just an idea and a process to allow us to get money into the park. You know, in fact, even when the Conservancy does volunteer work in the park, a representative of Parks and Rec is there at all times. Nothing happens in this park without a representative from Parks and Rec. So I'm in favor of this. I have been since day one. I'm happy that we're here voting on this, and I encourage all my colleagues to support this. Thank you.
Councilmember Lassiter.
Thank you, Mayor. I too had not intended to weigh in on this particular issue, but my colleague raised a particular issue, and there was some level of discussion about the relevancy of TERSs. And while I would never suggest to the community that all TERSs are relevant and are well run or perfect, and while everyone understands that a TERS budget does by necessity draw away from the general fund, I would be much more of an advocate for the continuation of some of the more effective TERSs for the single reason, if only, that there are few, if any, other increments, instruments, availabilities for specific parts of this city to have not only an advocate for that part of the city, but also a pot of monies to do public works related projects. And the concept of creating a tax increment reinvestment zones across the city, along with transparent boards, transparent meetings, public sector related projects, have always been allowing for an infusion of capital into parts of this city where there has not been capital infusions in the past, and where advocacy, regardless of how well intentioned, has not existed. So I guess I would just like to put that on the record as we move forward in the discussion of budgets, which are always important, that these tools are tools that can serve the public very well, and I believe do in often instances. Thank you.
Councilmember Green.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me just, and I too was not going to weigh in on this issue, but with regard to what my colleague Lassiter said with regard to TERS and why they're so important to some communities here in the city, as Councilman Costello talked about, the limited budgets that we have, parks and other parts of the city. There are some parts of the city that have been ignored, essentially, and they have absolutely no advocates, and they have absolutely no resources to build and to focus economic development for that particular area. You actually have some that when you ask about an economic development plan for a particular part of the city, none exists. You go to the Greater Houston Partnership and others, and you ask about a specific economic development plan for a specific part of the city. It's not even on the radar. And you look at economic development projects that actually have come to a specific part of the city in the last 5 years, there's none exist, there's no plan, and no one really is paying any attention. So these terms are extremely important to serve as an advocate for specific parts of the city that has been underrepresented or have not had representation, and an opportunity for an infusion of cash to a particular part of the city will be the only And I repeat, the only opportunity, particular parts of the city will have an opportunity to grow. So yes, I believe, Councilmember Martin and I have had this conversation. I do think we probably need to look at, you know, the length of the TERS, the economic development, maybe benchmark them from a standpoint of city resources and the city budget. But as a tool in place to grow parts of the city, I think you know, that's the only way that we're going to be able to grow certain parts of our city. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem Bradford.
Thank you. Well, I too intended not to weigh in.
We're almost there.
But however, it seemed like the day for those who intended not to weigh in would weigh in, so I thought it was best that I weigh in. You know, I'm also one of those people who believe that the lowest level that you can push authority and utilization of resources, the better. I believe that state is better than federal. City council is better than state, and I believe that the local entities, whether they are super neighborhoods, whether they are tiers, the management districts, I think those are better entities to manage and deploy resources because it pushes it closer to where the actual dollars come from and the people that have the greatest concern in any particular area. The closer to the neighborhoods, the closer to the businesses, the managing the activity, the better. The downside is what Councilmember Martin has pointed out. The general greater good of all suffers to some extent when you take the increment from the general fund to keep it in the area. But I still believe that managing money by those who produce that money, whether it's residents, business, or whomever in the community, is better served that way. Now, how else do we fund the much needed repairs in our city's park? I posed that question. There are a number of people who are opposed to annexing Memorial Park like Church 16. But nobody refutes the fact that there are dire needs in the park, whether it's for improvements, maintenance, irrigation, all of that is needed. How else do we get that 100 million, 150 million that's needed? A plausible plan has been put on the table. And no other viable options were brought forward other than we could float another bond election at some point down the road. It could be done that way. So because it has been pushed to the local level, a really low local level of the tiers, and as has been said, all those meetings are open, but just because they are open doesn't mean that you walk in and have input. I mean, you can be heard. That happens at city council sometimes. And we have public meetings and people come up and speak, but that doesn't mean their voice changes anything. It doesn't mean because they are open that you set the agenda. So Councilman Noriega, I appreciate what you said earlier when you got a commitment from the church that this park thing will be an agenda item, because if it's not an agenda item, you're out of order. So thank you for garnering that item. So having said all of that, I believe local level is best, and moving it down to the tiers and allowing those people to manage that. It may not be the best thing, but it's the only thing on the table, Councilman Costello. Nothing else was brought forward to offer as a viable option as to how we take care of our central park. That's the best jewel the city has over there. People from all over the city use the park. They come from out of town to use that park even. So having gone through all of that, and I say to the people who are still suspect and still think that it's something that we should not do, is that this is the best deal on the table at this time. And in the spirit of being amicable and one who intended not to comment on this item, I shall vote for it. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Rudd.
Thank you, Mayor.